Moses was a prince of Egypt turned shepherd, a prophet who spoke with God and led the Israelites out of slavery with miracles. His life was a tapestry of privilege, exile, and divine calling, a journey from the opulence of Pharaoh's court to the solitude of the desert, and finally to the heart of a nation's struggle for freedom. He guided his people through the wilderness for 40 years, delivering laws and forging a nation's identity. Through hardship and hope, Moses became the voice of a people, shaping their beliefs and their destiny with every step through the barren land. But even giants must fall. When Moses climbed Mount Nebo to glimpse the promised land, he knew he would not enter it. He stood on the threshold of a dream, seeing the future he had worked for, yet knowing it would be realized by others. His death left a void, a nation suddenly without its leader, facing an uncertain future. The people mourned not just a man but the loss of guidance, vision, and the comfort of a familiar presence. There was no grand farewell, no tomb to visit. The Bible simply says he died in Moab according to God's word. His resting place remains unknown, shrouded in mystery, as if to remind us that some stories are meant to remain unfinished. What were his final thoughts? What did it mean to come so close yet not complete the journey? Did he feel peace, regret, or hope for those he left behind? These questions linger, echoing through history. The silence after Moses' death was not just an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter. In that quiet, the people had to find their own strength and purpose. The Israelites stood on the edge of destiny, vulnerable and leaderless. The promised land was within sight, but the path forward was uncertain, and fear mingled with hope. The story does not end with Moses. Instead, it pivots to supernatural conflict, divine intervention, and the rise of a new leader. The torch was passed, and the journey continued, shaped by the legacy he left behind. The question is not just about Moses' burial, but how faith and a people move forward when their foundation is gone. How do you rebuild when the pillar of your world is suddenly absent? This is a story about the endurance of faith beyond one extraordinary life. It is about the courage to continue, to trust, and to hope, even when the path is unclear. What happens next is as mysterious and dramatic as anything that came before. The journey of a people, shaped by loss, uncertainty, and the promise of something greater was only just beginning. The legacy of Moses is not just in what he did, but in what his absence set in motion. His story became the foundation for new leaders, new challenges, and new hope. The journey was far from over. For the Israelites, and for all who look to their story, the unanswered question remains: how do we move forward when the one who led us is gone? Moses' death was shrouded in secrecy, wrapped in an air of mystery that has lasted for thousands of years. The Bible tells us that God himself buried Moses in the land of Moab, far from the eyes of any living soul. And to this day, no one knows the exact location of his grave. There was no funeral procession, no monument to mark the spot, just a hidden resting place chosen and guarded by God alone. But why such secrecy? God understood the Israelites' deep tendency toward idolatry, their longing for tangible symbols to worship. If they had discovered Moses' grave, it could have easily become a shrine, a place of pilgrimage, or even a site of worship. By keeping it hidden, God protected his people from the temptation to worship the man, rather than the message he brought. Moses' true legacy was never meant to be a tomb or a relic, but the law he delivered, the faith he inspired, and the covenant he helped forge between God and Israel. His influence was always intended to be spiritual, woven into the very fabric of the nation's identity, passed down through generations, not tied to a single physical place. The absence of a grave forced Israel to remember Moses through his words, his actions, and the enduring impact of his leadership, not through relics or monuments. God's final act for Moses was deeply personal, a private honor reserved for his most faithful servant, a gesture of divine intimacy and respect. No human hands laid him to rest, only God was worthy to perform this sacred task, marking Moses' passing as unique among all leaders. The hidden grave stands as a powerful symbol. Moses' story transcends human experience, his final chapter written by God alone, echoing through history as a testament to faith and humility. The mystery deepens in the New Testament, where Jude describes a supernatural dispute over Moses' body. Michael the archangel and Satan contended for it, not with violence but with authority. Satan may have wanted the body to tempt Israel into idolatry or to claim Moses' failures. Michael, though powerful, did not argue on his own authority. He simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." This moment shows that even in death, Moses' significance echoed in the spiritual realm. God's plan was to keep Moses' body hidden, protecting Israel from temptation and preserving the prophet's legacy. The battle was not about a corpse, but about the future of a nation's faith. Michael's victory ensured that Israel would move forward in faith, not idolatry. With Moses gone, Israel faced a daunting transition. The people mourned the loss of their great leader, feeling the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The desert air was thick with both grief and anticipation, as the nation stood on the threshold of a new era. The promised land was in sight, just across the Jordan, but their leader was no more. The dreams of generations seemed so close, yet the path forward was clouded with questions. Joshua, Moses' longtime assistant and a man of proven faith, was chosen to lead. He had witnessed miracles, endured trials, and learned at Moses' side, preparing for this very moment. Stepping into Moses' role was overwhelming. Joshua felt the weight of expectation and fear. The responsibility of guiding an entire nation pressed heavily on his shoulders. In the quiet of the morning, God's words to him were clear. "Be strong and courageous, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you." These words were not just a command, but a promise of unwavering support. The people had to trust not just Joshua, but that God's presence remained with them. Their faith would be tested as they faced new challenges together. God publicly affirmed Joshua, transferring authority and promise. The elders and the community recognized this new leader, setting him apart for the task ahead. The mission was never about one man, but about God's ongoing plan. The journey was a shared calling, uniting the people in purpose. Joshua's leadership began not as a replacement, but as a new chapter in the story of redemption. He was called to lead with humility and faith. The power was not in Joshua, but in God's presence with him. Every step forward depended on trust in the divine. Israel's future depended on faith in God, not nostalgia for the past. They had to let go of what was behind and embrace the unknown ahead. The journey would continue, led by a new instrument of God's purpose. Each step was a testament to their hope and obedience. Joshua's courage was forged in obedience, not confidence. His strength came from surrender, not self-assurance. The nation stood ready to cross into destiny, guided by God's promise. The threshold of the promised land beckoned them forward. The torch had passed, but the flame remained divine. The story of Israel would continue, fueled by faith in the enduring presence of God. News of Moses' death swept through Israel like a storm. The people mourned for 30 days, a month of shared grief and remembrance. This was more than tradition. It was a nation honoring its founder and processing profound loss. In mourning, they remembered Moses' miracles, guidance, and sacrifice. The pause unified them, allowing space to let go of the past and prepare for the future. Grief was not a weakness, but a bridge between eras. As the days passed, hearts slowly turned from sorrow to readiness. Joshua too mourned, but also prepared for the task ahead. The mourning period was God's way of healing and transition. When the weeping ended, Israel was ready to follow a new voice. After mourning, God spoke directly to Joshua. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now get ready to cross the Jordan." The mission was clear. No more waiting, only action. God promised Joshua victory and his unfailing presence. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you." The key to success was not military might, but obedience to God's law. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night. Prosperity and success would come from faithfulness, not strategy. Joshua's leadership was to be defined by trust in God's word. The future depended on obedience, not strength. To confirm his support, God performed a miracle echoing Moses' greatest feat. As the priests carrying the ark stepped into the flooded Jordan, the waters parted. Israel crossed on dry ground, just as at the Red Sea. This public sign declared, God was with Joshua as he had been with Moses. The era of miracles continued under new leadership. The first challenge in the Promised Land was Jericho, a city with walls that seemed unbreakable. God's plan was unconventional: march around the city in silence for 6 days, then 7 times on the 7th day and shout. No weapons, just obedience and faith. The people inside Jericho watched in confusion and fear. For Israel, it was a test of trust. Would they follow God's strange command? On the seventh day, the walls collapsed at the sound of trumpets and a mighty shout. The city fell, not by force but by faith. The lesson was clear: victory comes from obedience, not might. God's ways defy human logic, but his promises never fail. Jericho's fall was a defining moment for Israel's new beginning. The people learned that faith, not strategy, wins the battles that matter most. The conquest had begun, led by trust in God. Before Jericho, God commanded Joshua to circumcise all Israelite men born in the wilderness. This act, risky before battle, was a renewal of the covenant with Abraham. It marked them as God's people, set apart for his purpose. The army was vulnerable, but their trust was in God's protection, not their own strength. Circumcision was a declaration: we belong to God. Spiritual identity mattered more than military readiness. This obedience prepared their hearts for the battles ahead. God was teaching them dependence and faith before victory. Their vulnerability became a lesson in trust. The conquest would be won by allegiance to God, not by force. The story after Moses is a testament to God's plan outlasting any one leader. Moses' death was not the end, but the spark for a new era. Joshua's courage grew from God's encouragement, not personal strength. The conquest of Canaan was a spiritual journey, not just a military one. God's instructions often seemed illogical, but obedience brought victory. Israel's greatest weapon was trust in God's word. The message endures. God's promises remain even when leaders change. Faith means stepping forward, even when afraid. Every victory is just the start of a deeper journey. The God of Moses and Joshua still calls us to trust and follow as his story unfolds.